Thank you for that intro, Michael. As you said, my name is Chris Noring. I came here from London. I'm originally from Sweden. So any Swedish people here? Awesome. How many Austrians? Whoa! All right, I'm here to talk to you guys about Vue and Vue.js. So yet another SPA framework, right? We haven't seen enough of those. We've been on Backbone, we've been on React. How many AngularJS? How many are still doing AngularJS? Yeah, you know how it is, right? Frameworks come and frameworks go. And Vue is one of the latest ones. To me, I think it looks really, really polished. It's empowering, right? Because we want to be able to start writing our applications within 5 minutes. We don't want to care about npm install and configuration files. Who here uses Webpack? Quite a few. Who loves using Webpack? Yeah, that's what I thought, right? We just want to start. We want to produce business values because we got that product manager breathing down our neck saying, we want the next feature in, when can you deliver? I don't know, I'm stuck in a configuration. I'm on Stack Overflow. We all know that pain. So today I'm here to talk about the simplicity that is Vue. But you can take Vue as far as you want. You can make it really, really complicated if you want. But you can start out really nice, and that's what I like about it. All right. So I told you a bit why you should care, but I think GitHub probably tells us a better story. So Vue.js has 93,000 plus stars on GitHub. That's pretty impressive. We're talking about the same amount as React, and React has been out for quite a while. So you see developer adoption of Vue.js or developer interest of Vue.js is pretty high. But I don't think that many of you are using it in production, am I right? How many here is using Vue.js? Awesome. Maybe it's just London. I think I got one hand or something. But that's great to see. And it's also great to see that the core team of Vue.js is like 20 people. It's not just Evan anymore. And I think Evan is happy about that. And we also see the other candidates, right? We see Vue.js, we see React, we see Angular, we see AngularJS. These are all very good candidates, and it's probably going to make your CTO sleep well at night, at least for 10 days, right? Because then we got another framework. So as I said before, Vue.js is simple, but it is made simple by the fact that the documentation is outstanding. I couldn't say anything else, right? You can read for hours in there. So the interest is there. Quite a few of your hands is actually up and say, I'm using it in production, which is really great to see. So let's talk about Vue basics. Let's talk about the fact that Vue is really simple to get started with, because it is. So let's start with the DOM. So our DOM is this simple, right? This is what we remember from the AngularJS days. Just a script tag of our Vue.js and just a script tag to our app.js, our entry point to the application. This is not much to look at. I've so far not done a simple yarn install or npm install or whatever, right? It's just 2 script tags. That's where you want to start. So our Vue app is this simple. We instantiate this object from Vue. We target whatever element that we mean to replace in our markup with the EL. So we're saying, go find a div or whatever it is that has an ID called app, and also make sure to define a data property. So this data is the thing that we can get out in the DOM. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I'd explain it anyway. So imagine that we, at this point, is going to do this. Hello, Vue, because this is literally what we have, right? We had this little DOM, we had these 4 or 5 lines of Vue code, and we got a Vue app up and running. Dead simple. At this point, everything is super simple as long as it's hello world, right? Then to-do lists are very simple too, but that's not where we are as developers. We usually have all these other pains. So what happened when we tried to create our Vue app? We instantiated our app component by talking to this guy, new Vue, and we provided it with an object that contains the definition of our application. And as you saw in the last slide before this one, we used interpolation. If you've been on AngularJS, you kind of recognize yourself, right? So just take that, whatever is in that data property, get it out there. So next question, how do we render a list? Well, we have something called structural directives. In this case, it's called v4. So everything in Vue is prepended by v something. So that's a good lesson for your memory. So the thing we need to do at this point is to add a list to our data property. We just add items. As you see, we have 2 different items in that list. And of course, we use v4, and to no surprise, this is quite simple. We just call v4 item in items and out with the list. That's as simple as we would expect it to be. Conditional rendering. This presentation is about turtles a bit. I think you're gonna get that after a while. Yeah, so do we whiff it or do we welse it? And what do we mean by that? So whiff is when we compare it to a condition where we say, if this is true, render this, v else if it's not true. So like this, here we say has error. If we have an error, then output the error. If we don't have an error, just add that v else in there and we output something else. What about form controls? Let's start off with the input element. So the input element uses something called the V model and a double binding. But you say double bindings, wasn't that something bad that we left from AngularJS and we went into React or maybe even Angular 2 or wherever framework? Well, they did this in a smart way, so we don't have that issue anymore. So V model is something that looks upon your new item in this case. As soon as you change something in this input, that's going to be changed in new item in our data. So v4, v-if, and v-model, that's what we learned so far. Checkbox element, dead simple. We got the input type checkbox, and we got the v-model that's going to be either true or false, depending on if it's clicked or not clicked. This is simple stuff so far. But here's where Vue becomes really nifty and very easy for us to use. So here's a list of checkboxes. Can anyone guess the theme? I said turtles, right? Did I say I meant Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? That's what I meant. So Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, and so on. That makes me really old, right? How many here grew up with turtles? Oh, that's good. I'm not that old. All right. So here we've got a list of checkboxes. So every time we check something in that list of checkboxes, our array gets added with another item. So that's a very nice little shortcut. And of course, if we deselect something, that item is going to be removed from the array. So with radio buttons, you just need to make sure that they look at the same v-model value. And in that case, they get to be exclusive. So if you check one radio button, then the other one gets unchecked and so on. So select drop-down lists. We just do that simply with a select and a v-model, and we can easily repeat out all the options that we have in a list to make sure that we can select one or many items in that drop-down. What about methods? So methods is, go figure, it's called methods. So we have this methods property, and inside of that property, we can define X number of methods that we want to be able to listen to. As everything else in Vue, we got Vue hyphen something, or Vue dash. So Vue hyphen on, and the event name, in this case, it's called click. And we make that thing point to our save method. Or if we don't want to type that much, because that's a lot to type, we just do an @ So that's nice. Shortcut. Aha. Do you guys know which turtle this is? Michelangelo? Yeah, good, good. Well, I'm old. I forgot my childhood, right? Anywho, Michelangelo here is telling us, okay, we know all about creating Vue applications. Are we done? Am I a ninja? Well, I kind of felt like a ninja because I was up and running in 5 minutes with Vue.js, so that was pretty neat. So this guy is called Splinter. Thank you. Good. Interactive audience. So let's talk next about components, because everything today is component-centric. Angular is component-centric, React is component-centric, and Vue is component-centric. So that means that you can slice up your app in small little logical components that you can create a tree of components from that. There are different ways of creating a component. This is one of them. So you can call the global view, view.component. You provide it with a component name, and as your second argument, you give it an object definition. So here's a component example. One of the first things we define is a template, and the template is simply our markup and whatever interpolation we want to happen. So in this case, we got an input field, we got a button, so we're able to type something, we're able to push a button and have something happen. So in this case, we have the data method that just returns the product, which is a void object to start with. And as you can see here in the methods that we call when we click the button, we call some API service, that thing calls create product, and at that point, we're saying we're done. So that's pretty simple. So, of course, we can place a component within a component, a parent component and child component, and yeah, we can place a component within a component within a component. I think you get the idea, the babushka model. So, here we have a parent component with a simple template, and as you can see, we place the child component in there, and the child component is just a simple component, and that thing just works. Now, this is all well and good if you're using script tags with Vue.js, but I think most of you who are on Vue.js, you're using the Vue CLI, am I right? How many Vue CLI? How many script tags? Okay, 1, 2, all right. So probably most of you is going to be on the Vue CLI, and you will do this a bit differently, so I'm going to talk about that one too. It's not vastly different, it's the same concept, but they're arranged a bit differently. So think of it this way, one file equals one component. And in that file, you will have a template tag, a script tag, and a style tag. So our template tag is simply our markup, the script tag is our component definition, and our style tag is, well, the styling that belongs to the component. And it looks something like this. Markup here on top in the template, and in the script, we got the component definition. As you can see here, we moved in the name property inside of that thing, and we call it hello world, and we got the data property and so on that you're used to, that I showed you so far. And here we got something very interesting. We got a scoped style. We isolate ourselves style-wise. So why is that interesting? We all love those CSS that leaks, right? Don't we? We change here somewhere in the CSS file, something happens over here, you got some crazy developer colleague coming in and say, what the heck did you do? I had to bite my tongue there. You know, as developers, we don't have a nice language, am I right? So what about child components? How do we define child components in this Vue CLI ES6 module environment? Well, we need to import the child component that we mean to use, and we need to tell the parent component, this is a child component that you're about to use. And it looks simply like this. So we start off with our parent component here with the hello world. We import our test component, and here inside of components, we say that, yeah, test is one of our children. It's okay to render that thing in the markup. And then we're free to use it like so. So as you can see here, we got the test component inside the template. So let's talk about component input and output. If we don't deal with component input and output, we don't really have a component worth using, right? Otherwise, we just have a little template, a little self-contained world. We really want to be able to actually provide it with data, and we want to be able to trigger events that flows upwards. So that looks like this. We define this props thing here. In this case, we call it item. So that means when we are about to use this product component, we just call vbind an item, because that's what we told it to be called, and we bind it to this property inside of the parent component. So that's pretty neat. So that gives us the ability to just, inside of the markup here, to just call item name, because, well, at that point, we have populated it. And this is very, very nice that this comes. Any React developers in here? So this is pretty much, I'm going to talk about like prop types, but Vue, right? So this is all about being able to verify that whatever this crazy colleague of yours puts into your nice little component that actually validates and doesn't break it. Because you didn't do anything wrong, am I right? It's the other crazy developer. So what you can do here is to specify a type. If you want to make it really, really simple, you can have a props, and that props can have, for example, a props called year, and it's of type number, or you can have a props called title, and that is of type string. Type and required. Well, this means that we can do this a little bit better. Not only can we specify the type, we can also specify the fact that you cannot omit this property. You need to specify this, or else. So or else in the world of Vue.js means that we get a warning in our console, right? As developers, of course, we got the developer tools open, but if you close that thing, no one's ever going to see it. So make sure you got the developer tools up and running, because you will receive a warning if you were to violate this contract. This is neat. So this means that if we actually omit this property, we can actually handle this. So imagine that we have this product detail component. Imagine that we have a property on it called product, and that other guy, that developer we don't like, he actually omits our product. And we are saying, but dude, this is a product detail component. What part of product detail don't you get? So, okay, so he actually omits our product property. Do we have a problem? Well, we can actually tell him, haha. We specify a default function that says, well, you omitted this property. That means I'm just going to answer with some default object instead to make up for your mistakes. So at that point, the other developer omits the product, and you end up in a situation, well, I still got a product, and my code is fine. Ha! So a pro tip here. When you, if you don't like to type too much when you bind values, instead of doing vbind, you can just do :product. And, it's the same thing. But as you can see here, when we use our product detail component and the product attribute, everything is going to be fine. Because at this top example here, we're actually providing a product, everybody's happy, nothing breaks. In the second example of product detail, we are omitting the product property, which means our default method will kick in and say, here's a default object for you. We can do this even better. Validator function. So in this case, we're saying, well, all right, you actually provided me with a value. You gave me something, but I'm not sure I'm happy. So let's inspect that value. Let's see what this value is. If this value is larger or equal to 18, I'm going to be happy. If it's not, then, warning. You know the deal. So at this point, imagine that we have a parent component with two different data values, right? So in the first case, we have something with age 11. We input the age here, and it screams and say, you violated this condition. So at this point, you get a warning in the console. And in the other case, we say, well, here's a good value. Everybody's happy. Everyone's sleeping well. Make sense? Heavy lunch, yeah? Okay, so output. So outputs are about propagating event upwards. It's about propagating events from the component that you're standing on, which is your child component, up to your parent. So let's start with the parent definition. So here we have a parent that within itself has a product detail, a child component. We have a product property, and we got the save here. So we're providing a save to, and make sure that if that thing is actually propagated upwards, then handle save will handle this case. All right? So the child component now looks something like this. We got a product detail component, and what I want you to look at is here inside of the button here, we're doing a $emit. So $emit and save, because this was the name of the property, right? So at this point, we're saying emit this event, and here's some payload, and you there, as a parent, capture this thing. So every time you're thinking about how do I send an event from a child to a parent, this is how you do it. Okay, here's a little tricky scenario, because it looks simple in the beginning, but if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you're going to end up wrong. So that's why I'm doing this little scenario. So imagine that we have a product, a product detail component, we have a product, we want to change it locally. And when we change it locally, we want to make sure that as we're typing, we don't want it to change straight away, right? We don't want to just provide it with the product, changing it about, and the parent says, yeah, I got that change, and that change, and that change. You just want one event up when you say, now I'm actually done. At this point, I'm going to emit a save event. At this point, you, as a parent, can start caring. Not before that. Before that, I'm just editing to my heart's content. All right? So imagine that we have a parent component that has a product list. This product list here has a button on it that says select. So we're able to select a product from that product list. And when that happens, we're going to end up here. So we're going to populate a property here called selected product, which in our world means that, well, we have a product detail component inside of here that's going to bind to this. So as soon as we select a product from that product list, the product detail is going to say, here's your product. All right? So within that product detail, we have this scenario. So the product detail knows that, well, I take this product property in, so now I've got something to work with. But inside of the data property, I say, thank you for this input property, but to make sure that the parent doesn't listen to whatever changes I'm doing, I'm just going to copy all your values. So at that point, I got a disconnect between the product that was sent in and the product I want to change. So I copy that product with this operation. At this point, I can freely just muck about and change that product to my heart's content. When I'm done, I'm going to click the button and I'm going to say save on the product being P in this case, my local product. That looks good in theory, but we have a problem. My turtle is sad. Why is he sad? Because when I do a new selection in my list, that's not being reflected. So why is that new selection not being reflected? Well, our problem is that we're not listening to our bindings changing, and that's our problem. So let's have a look at the parent template again and see why that is. Okay, we got our product list, fine. We got our select, we got our product detail, listening to that. But we're not listening to changes. So to fix that, we need something called a watch property. So using a watch property in the child component means that suddenly we can listen to whatever happens to P, right? So if someone actually do a new selection in that product list, P can say, whoa, someone actually did a change here. So if someone does a change, I want to know about it. So at that point, this one should actually say product, I believe. Anywho, when that change happens, it's going to come in as a new value and say, I got a new product for you, and you need to care. All right? So that new product comes in, I copy that thing, and everybody's happy. So at that point, our application works again, as intended. We've all done that dance, right? When nobody's looking. Or I'm alone. All right, so one step closer to mastering Vue, right? Nope, this guy says we're not done. You know why? Because single-page applications consist of more than one page. We can't have just, one page. We need several pages. So to make up for that, we got routing. So routing inside of Vue.js is as simple as defining a route array like this. We just specify a list with path and component for each one. We say, here's the route, and here's the component that's going to deal with it. And the same thing with the other one. And then we instantiate a new Vue router, and we just put that route list in there. And eventually, we're going to put that const router inside of the Vue application, and routing just works. Very few lines of code to make it work. Viewports. Viewports is an interesting topic. So let's start off with one viewport, because otherwise it's going to be too much to handle. So a viewport simply means what part of our application is going to switch, right? So our application normally consists of a header, some kind of viewport that changes for every route change, and maybe some kind of footer. That's usually the layout of our application. So here we're talking about the thing that might actually switch, or will switch. That's as simple as using something called router outlet. So here we have the top menu, router outlet, and the footer. So how do we navigate this? Of course, there are two different answers here, right? Navigation in any spa is about either defining a link that we can click, or we do some kind of programmatic navigation. Those are usually the two options that we have. So here we have a router link that we specify to say you should have the path/products, and when I click you, I end up on the right page and the right component answers. There's another type of routing, obviously, because we're not going to be happy with /about or /home or whatever, right? So most likely we're going to have a route that says, well, products and some number, a wildcard. That thing could be anything depending on the ID in the database. So imagine here that we define the other route here being product/:ID, and the colon indicates that we're dealing with a wildcard. So that means when we define this product/:ID, it's going to hit two different URLs. It's going to hit /11 as well as /114. But here's the question: how do we actually dig out this parameter so we can use it? We can simply use it by calling this $route.params.our wildcard. So that's pretty simple enough. And as you can see inside of this component, we are dealing with a products array, and we're able to filter out the product that we need. All right. So what about query params? Route params are great, but in reality, they tend to return way too big data sets, and we need to filter down that thing, right? So for that reason, we got query params after the question mark. So query params are, for example, a page size and a page number. Once we got that, we got our nice little slice of a product list. So route query.query param, that's how you actually are able to access that thing. Which means that when we have our, well, more like a product list component, we can just simply pass in the page and the page size and so on, and we're able to filter that thing on the server side, and back comes a nice little slice of our data set. All right. This has happened to us quite a lot, right? I mean, the user is like, yep, I see what you're trying to do here, but I have my own idea of a URL, or it might be a URL that you retired and you forgot all about. Point is, someone goes into the URL and changes that thing to a route that you don't know what it means. So at that point, you need a catch-all route. You can easily do that. So as long as we place it as the last route definition in our routes array, we can just simply say /*, and we can just say not found and present the user with a, this is the last page of the internet kind of error message, right? Programmatic routing. Programmatic routing is a must-have, I think. And it's as simple as just doing this. Just call this $router.push. Push just means this is your next URL that I want you to go to. You can do this in two different flavors. Either you do it like this at the top with the /products, or you just refer to the name that you give the router in the router list. You're able to navigate that way. You can have multiple viewports, of course. I think that's a given in most routing libraries today. And this means that we have a default route with no name, which is our normal route. And we got something called a header route, because we might actually have a different menu to the page we're going than, a products menu might be different from an about menu, right? So for that reason, hitting a products list means that we might need to change the footer and or the header. And that's quite easily done by giving the router a view name. And when we go to default, that means that we're going to the route that doesn't have a name. And in the other case, we say, well, here's a named viewport. This is the one I want you to answer with. So with products in this case, we could easily have said like products footer and say the footer will look different on the product list page, for example. Yep. Are you feeling this guy yet, or is it interesting? We need to learn how to test our app. How many here loves testing? Man, you like pain, right? Yeah. Here's the thing. Testing in Vue is quite nice, because you got two different options when it comes to testing. We are able to test quite easily by using the Vue CLI, because literally everything is set up for us, and we can just start entering tests, because configuration is painful. All right? So with unit testing, we can use Karma, Mocha, Chai, or Jest. Who here loves Jest? Ah, okay, interesting. Usually I get a very large handful with React developers, but Mocha. All right. I don't think you love tests that much. Anywho, with end-to-end testing, we got Nightwatch. That helps us very easily to perform our tests. I believe it's on top of a Selenium thing. So how do we construct a unit test? Well, the first thing we need to do is to get something called a constructor reference. Once we got that reference, we instantiate the constructor. After that, we call mount to actually get the component instance. Once we have that instance, we can start inspecting it. We can start to say to this component, I think in your markup there's an H1 or a div with this class, and you're able to find that sub-element, and you can just inspect that element and say, aha, you have this value, that means you're working, and I'm good this time, right? So from what I just said, imagine here that we start by importing the component we want to test, so import test. We have const constructor, which just says view extend, blah, blah. We have a constructor reference. At that point, we do a new constructor. We call mount on that thing, and we're ready for business, right? So the VM represents the component instance, and we're able to take that thing and say, I want to use a query selector, and I want to find my H1 element, and I want to say, do you contain the phrase testing ... If you do, green test. But of course, every component that we know about most likely have input props, so how do we deal with those? Imagine that we have a simple component such as this, and it has a props title. When we have a props title, we need to be able to actually supply that when we construct the component. And for our test, same business as usual, constructor reference, get our component, but this time we provide it with the props data, and that thing is just a dictionary of properties that you wanted to start out with. And per usual, you can just verify, do you contain what I think you contain? And if you do, green test, otherwise red test and sad face, right? So how do we deal with events? Now, this is an interesting one. So imagine that you have a change event here, that when you click a button, you want some property inside of the component to be set, and you want to be able to assert on that. So our test is quite simple, but it's maybe not as intuitive, but as with everything coding, once you've done it once, you know how to continue, right? We all know how to copy-paste. Stack Overflow, right? Yep. Okay, so we create our component, we get a reference to our click event by calling new window event with a click, and on that component, or on that button, we do dispatch event with our click event. We call this little guy watch your run, and yeah, we would have guessed this, right? Makes sense? No? All right, so this is the copy-paste moment, right? Watch your run, yeah, it just needs to be there. Once you have that thing, you're able to assert and say, yes, my text field here contains clicked, and I'm the best developer there is, until the next 5 minutes when there's a red test that's failing. So end-to-end tests are sweet. So with end-to-end tests, we're able to do pretty much the same as we did in the unit test. So this is kind of a flavor thing. Are we more comfortable testing services in unit tests, or with end-to-end tests, we want to test longer user scenarios, right? So it's really up to us where we want to add all the pain when it comes to writing tests. So with the end-to-end test, we just say, wait till our app is visible. Once it is, assert that my component is there, element present, and it contains the text I think it does. Try to find me a button. Once you have a button, do a click. Once I do a click, assert that it contains the click text. So that's pretty easy. That's literally the exact same thing as the second unit test, right? And one more test with this. So imagine that we have our test component. We write some input in our input element, and we want to assert that the component contains the data we think. So we're same thing as last time. Look for our application for 5 seconds. If we find it, make sure we have our component. Set the value in the input field. Once we do so, assert that it contains what we think it does. So as you see, it's quite simple to just click a button as well as insert data inside of an input field. And yeah, you should be listening to this guy when it comes to testing. His name is Ed Jerberg, he's London-based, but he's written a really, really nice book about Vue.js and testing. And I believe he has like a test utils library out as well. Yeah, really great guy. And yeah, exciting with tests, right? You're still awake, because I hear you laughing. Okay, so let's talk about state management in a fairly fast time. I got 3:40. So centralized state management. So this is about our application state just existing in one global object, but with some nice wrapper on it, right? So how many have heard about Redux? How many using Redux? How many love it? Oh man, you like pain? No, I'm just kidding. Redux is quite nice for big applications. But yeah, I mean, if you know what Redux is, you pretty much get the idea of what Vuex is, but here we actually mutate. I know that's a bad word, right? So imagine that all our application state lives in a store. Imagine that we start the store as simple as just adding a script tag, but again, using the Vue CLI, that's just an npm install, and we're in business, right? So instantiating the store is as simple as doing this, new Vuex store, and provide it with some initial state. Everything contains a count in all the demos on the internet, right? So to read from the state, we need to do two things. We need to set up a computed property, and we need to show it through interpolation. That means what? So we got this little property here called computed, which essentially means we're going to define a method under you here that says count, and in that count, we're going to do this.store.count to make sure that we can actually display this in the template. And through the magic of interpolation, we're able to show it like this. So that's a hello world with our store. So we can easily change that value by using something called mutations. So mutations is something on the store that's a property that holds X number of functions. And each of these functions will mutate your state. So in this case, the increment will do a state count plus plus and a state count minus minus. You can also access this state by calling this.state. So either you use the inputted state or the this.state, both will work. They both point to the same thing for kicks. So for mutations, this is your way of changing stuff. But how do we call mutations from the component? We call mutations by calling store.commit, right? So if we're inside of our component, we do store.commit and say, target this function. So this means that our count variable here, our count state, will be incremented. Or if we call store commit decrement, it will decrease. So we can also commit, of course, with a payload. So there's two parameters here, right? One, the name of the mutation itself, and one with us providing the payload. And yeah. And this means that the mutation function in this case, the add product, takes our state, but it also takes our payload as the second param. And we're able to do whatever to change our state. Actions is a different thing, because usually changing the state right away like this is not what you're likely to do, but it depends. So let me clarify, when am I using an action and when am I using a mutation? Well, you're actually using mutation in both cases, but actions are a more high-level concept. So with an action, this means that we're not going to directly mutate the state, but we're going to dispatch an action. And the reason why we're doing it this way is that actions can be asynchronous. They might take 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 2 minutes to complete. So once they have completed, then you're able to call a mutation by calling commit. Let me show you that. So we have our mutations that we've learned about, but we also have actions here. So when we dispatch an action, this guy might actually take 10 seconds or 2 minutes to complete, and once it's done, then we call context commit, and then we call this guy, right? So a bit level of indirection here, right? Action first, then mutation, then change state. So calling the action from the component is about calling store dispatch. So here you see that we call store dispatch increment, means we're hitting the action. After we hit the action, if you remember, we're going to do a commit. At that point, we're going to hit the mutation, right? So action, mutation, state change. And the reason for this is really the asynchronous scenario. which I'm going to show you here. So a normal asynchronous scenario is about setting a spinner, right? Because it might take time and you want to convey to the user, this thing is taking time. You fetch your data, and when you get your data, you either set that in the store or you say, I got an error, show the error, right? So it looks like this. So here we got an action of load products. We do a commit of a loading thing, so we have the ability to set a spinner. We fetch our products, and we do an async await, because we're all using that, right? We get our products from the database, and once we get our products back, we do a commit of those products, or if there's an error, we show an error. So our state can be overcrowded, of course. So far, I've shown you count and products list. That's not a lot of state, but imagine that you have 20 of those or 40 of those. You're starting to feel like, this is too much, right? It's like trying to get into WeAreDevelopers in the morning, right? That's what it looks like, I think. Yeah, and last year. So solution is to use something called store modules. That means we take our state and split it up into neat little logical compartments, which essentially means this. So we have multiple stores suddenly. Isn't that a bad thing? Wasn't I supposed to have one store? Well, it actually becomes one store, one top store. So what we have here is our normal store. We got our normal state, count. So imagine that the count is more of a general purpose state that all the stores can read from. And imagine that all the sub-stores are defined in here as modules. So each one of these modules are like a normal store. They just look anything like a store would, right? With a state, with a mutation, with an action, and so on. So here you're able to access your local state, which is state B, that guy up there, but you're also able to talk to your global state or a state in another module. So if you're in module A, for example, then you're able to write this state module B.B and actually reach over the border, right, and say, I want to talk to this module over here, right? So you can either talk to your local state, another module, or go upwards and talk to the head state. And I'm actually done. Summary, short summary. So we talked about components today. We talked about routing. We talked about testing, because we love testing. And we talked about Vuex. That was a lot, right? Well, I'm going to give you all the slides. You're going to be able to study them in your own time, as well as a GitHub repo. So, official documentation I found here, and the rest of the core team are well worth following, and I thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we have a couple of minutes for some questions. I'm going to just do 2 quick ones, okay? So, of course, we get the classic question when we're talking about JavaScript frameworks. How and where is Vue better than React? I guess you could throw in Angular as well. And in which cases would you consider Vue over other frameworks?
That's a good question. I said Vuex or Vue.js is very, very easy to get started with. So if you're unsure whether to go for React, because usually with React there's a lot of setup going on, it's the same thing with Angular 2, right? Because Angular has a lot of TypeScript and you might not want to learn TypeScript. So I would say that Vue.js is a very good candidate when it comes to just getting started and getting something out there really, really fast. And once you grow up, once you want these big boy projects, then you can move on to the Vue CLI. And it also depends on your philosophy, right? Because with React, you got JavaScript everywhere, right? So you got the ability to produce, you got HTML inside of JavaScript, and it's a different philosophy. So Vue.js is really going back to AngularJS in that sense. So I would say if you come from AngularJS, Vue.js pretty much look like 95% the same thing, but an improved version.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I would say it comes down to philosophy. They're all 3 very good options still, I would say.
All right, thank you. And just quickly, would you recommend using TypeScript with Vue?
I don't have an experience using that, but I do know. I mean, TypeScript is in the sense that you can have a slow adoption to it, right? You don't actually have to use all that TypeScript offers. That's really the buy-in with TypeScript. If you just want a let here and a const here, whatever you need, you can just use part of TypeScript, right? So once you grow up and want to use all of TypeScript, you can definitely do it. So I would say the sell-in or buy-in for TypeScript is the fact that you can just slowly adopt to it. I would recommend using TypeScript in anything that becomes really, really big, because that's when it's going to pay off. If you've got a relatively small app, I would say it's not worth the effort. But if it's super big, I mean, for example, they did all of Visual Studio Online, an entire code editor in TypeScript. That, to me, speaks volume of the fact that if you got ginormous project, TypeScript is going to win in the long run. But if we all got this nice, fast little app, I would say TypeScript is painful in the beginning before you see the trade-offs versus benefits.
Okay, and thank you for all the questions. Keep them coming for our next talks, and thank you very much, Chris. Okay.